There's no place else that I know of that you can be totally open and transparent with a group of business owners that knows exactly what you're going through. They've had their own challenges, their own successes. They've tried different things than you have, but they're basically doing the same thing.
Welcome to the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk podcast, our regular discussion with building industry professionals. This is Fine Homebuilding contributor and production manager at TDS Custom Construction, Ian Schwandt. Today I am joined by Victoria Downing, president of Remodelers Advantage. You can find the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk podcast and the original Fine Homebuilding podcast at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. You can leave feedback and ask questions there too. So Victoria, thank you for joining us. It's great to have you on here.
Very exciting, not only to be with you, a member of one of our production manager roundtables and all of that, but to be part of Fine Homebuildings. Very exciting. So thank you.
Yeah, I've talked about my experiences at the roundtable quite a bit on the main podcast with Patrick. So I think it's great to complete that circle and have the boss on here.
Yeah, no kidding. At least for the time being, right?
Right, yeah. So for those of the listeners who haven't heard of Remodelers Advantage, can you give us some background about what your services are and what you do for your member companies?
Sure. Remodelers Advantage has been around since the late 80s. So I've been with it myself since 1990. So a long time dedicated to this industry. And Remodelers Advantage is just for the remodeling industry. Our mission statement says that we light the path of greater success for motivated remodeling professionals. And we say that because we light the path, because we educate. We provide, knowledge and education and insights on how to improve processes and procedures and all the things that go into the business management side of the business. And we light the path for greater success because the members, the business owners, the production managers that join us are already very successful in their own right. But we just help them get to the next level that much faster. And we provide it to motivated remodeling professionals because while we light the path, as you know, we can't do it for you. So you got to get in there, get your hands dirty, and get stuff done. So that's what we do. We do it through our roundtables peer groups. We have 22 owner groups and 8 production manager groups with, so that's, I don't know how many member companies, 250 or so across the U.S. and Canada. We have a consulting department that does a lot of one-on-one work. As you know, I think you've worked with Tim Fowler as a facilitator of the production manager groups and so on. And then we teach and speak and run our own events and do all that fun stuff.
One of the things that I really enjoy about being part of the group is something you said about the motivated part, where you'll show the way, but there's a lot of work that you have to do. So it's very much a teach someone how to fish rather than giving them a bunch of fish philosophy, which exactly. I really enjoy.
Yeah.
I think I was pretty stunned at the amount of homework that Tim gave me for my first production manager roundtable, or with the amount of financial data that I had to bring and not just bring, but be ready to talk about in an intelligent way. But where did Remodelers Advantage get its start? How did this idea come about?
Well, it started with the founder of the company, whose name was Linda Case. And I don't know, many of your listeners may have heard of Case Design Remodeling here in the Washington, D.C. area, that's now run by Bruce Case, who's Linda's son. But Linda was involved in the business when it began, and she learned a lot about how to run a remodeling business. And then eventually she went out on her own as a consultant. And then I joined her in 1990. And we were providing all sorts of consulting services and helping people fine-tune their work, their operations. When we were approached numerous times by remodeling company owners who were saying, I've been to trade shows upon trade shows. It's great. I've learned a bunch, but I'm ready for the next level. I need deeper education, deeper insights. So with that, we formed Remodelers Advantage Roundtables, which again are peer groups comprised of up to 10 companies from non-competing geographic areas. So we focus a lot on the results, the KPIs of the company, the key performance indicators of the company. What's the gross profit? What's the revenue stream? What's the production? How much revenue is produced per full-time employee? All the things that people want to know so they can compare themselves to their peers and see how they're doing with their company.
And as those companies scale up in size, the financial literacy part becomes so much more important to the success. What are some of the things that RA does to help keep the path lit for its member companies?
Well, as companies grow and they grow in sophistication, and they don't have to spend so much time dissecting the numbers because the numbers make sense. Now, we start with the numbers of the business because they are the foundational element. They're the scorecard. Production managers, owners, they have to understand how to read these financials because, and the way I would say it is, the numbers tell the company's story. They tell how successful you are now and how successful you've been since the inception of the company. They tell you so much. If you know how to read those numbers, I believe the numbers speak to you and tell you what your next move should be in order to improve results, right? So we focus a lot on that. But as people master those financials, they get their reports organized, they learn what to look for and how to manage by exception and some of those things. The conversations become more sophisticated, right? Because they can move beyond those basic building blocks. And we do things like bring in outside speakers. There's book clubs. There's opportunities to learn from bigger companies. We try and do all sorts of things to bring a wide variety of resources to keep those conversations gaining in sophistication and really turning strategic instead of just the day-to-day hands-on. How do you build a company with a team with all the right people in all the right seats so you can really be humming along and just seeing your profits and your success grow?
So some of those numbers that are deep buried in those financials, like the slippage and grippage of a project, can you talk a little bit about the key performance indicators of things like margin, slip, and grip?
Sure. So in our world, there's not just one right answer for every company, right? There's a lot of different models, and we appreciate that and encourage it. Different owners have different ideas of how their company should be organized. So within our 210 owner roundtable groups, there's companies that build plans that were designed by architects. There's design build companies. There's some general contractors. It's a mix. And a lot of different people. Some companies have their own in-house labor. Some companies subcontract out everything. It's just a mix. Some people have salespeople. Some people don't. Some people have salespeople who design. All those things have to be taken into consideration. If you put 10 companies in a room, there's probably 8 different ways of running these businesses, which is the cool thing, right? But we need to look at these numbers and have a point of comparison. So we look at, how are you estimating for gross profit? Now, in our world, our top members, they can have a gross profit that ranges from 32 to 42% gross profit. That's revenue, less all the job costs. And there's that big of a range, right? It's any place in there can make you have the result you want, which is to have a 10% net profit at the end after the owner has taken out all compensation, including dividends or draws, right? So we want you to have a healthy 10% net profit, a 32 to 42% gross profit, and we want you to be accurate. So one of the biggest things when people first come to us is their estimates and the reports don't match. All the items in them don't match. So it's very difficult. They'll say, well, we're marking up to get a 38% margin. Well, that's funny. Your P&L is showing you at 26. Oh, well, because, then you got to dig in. You got to find a discrepancy. But once that's all organized, we want our members to have within 2% plus or minus gross profit from the budget to actual. No more than 2% slippage or grippage. So when I'm doing seminars, Ian, I would say, why do we care about grippage? That's good. Why do we not want to go more than 2%? And what would you say?
The 2% in either direction helps you have a better grip on your estimating, right? Like you
Yeah,
have an understanding of your own costs at that point. So
exactly. Exactly.
if you're routinely just going, we'll go 15 grand on this one,
Yeah.
but you're not basing it on anything. So it's another marker.
So I'll get back to some more metrics in a minute, but one of the things that I have seen as I facilitate, we have a team of top professional facilitators for our roundtable meetings, and I facilitate from time to time myself. So sometimes I'll go into a meeting with the owners groups, and there'll be a company that'll have huge slippage, and we're like, what the heck? Because we count it not only as a percentage, but we report it in real dollars too, right? It's
Right.
$150,000 in slippage. That should be a first attack. Figure out what's going on there. But sometimes, though, I'll say, what's your production manager saying about this? Oh, well, he doesn't say anything about it. They haven't gotten to the point where they're holding the production manager accountable for that. And a lot of times it's because the owners haven't let the production managers have any insight or any say into the price, right?
Right.
But so that just always blew my mind, that everybody wasn't pulling in the same direction.
It's been really interesting for me to go from being a carpenter in the commercial construction union to having my own small shop to now going through the lead carpenter stuff that Tim Fowler teaches and finding myself in this production manager position, because it's not the type of position that you think it would be when you're looking up at that position from the field. You kind of think of it more in terms of like, oh, they must be doing a lot of project work and working with clients, but it really is grinding the numbers out and understanding what those things mean and building your teams around it, which is something that really caught me by surprise, but it's been great for me to be involved in that side of the business. Well,
and you also work for somebody that is pretty progressive and open and, is building this awesome team, so it's great to get to meet you on this, knowing Ben and what he's doing with his company. So it's very, very cool.
Yeah, just the work that we're doing right now at the end of the year for our budgeting is pretty cool to be involved with, thinking through the year with our projected revenue and looking at the growth of our team and making decisions about, do we need another like junior project manager? Should we hire more field labor? Looking at our potential revenue, what helps us out the most, and without having that understanding of the base financials, you really can't do that.
When years ago, I remember we had a big difference between what we call our mentor groups, which are the more successful groups, and back then, again, some of the groups were not as sophisticated as they are now. So I went into the mentor group, and they're high-powered company owners. Every one of them in there were doing budgets. But yet in some of the other groups, very, very few were doing budgets. It's like that old saying, it's like shooting a rifle in the fog. There's a target out there somewhere, but you don't know where, right? So, or how to aim. So a budget to me is one of the most powerful tools in a business's repertoire, I just don't know how anybody can function with it. And not only just the overall, but like you said, it helps you figure out who you need, when to add them, when to plan them in. So it does all of that. And I totally lost my train of thought. It will come back. It'll come back. But I just think it's a super powerful tool to really hit your goals, Oh, I know what it was. So the other thing that I think is important when building your budget is not just to think of overall revenue, but what kinds of projects, how many of each kind of project, and what are the margins for each kind of project if they vary, which they often do. How do they go together into the one overall company budget? And that drives not only the kinds of people you hire and who's being assigned to what, but it also drives your marketing a lot, right?
Yep.
If you need 3 custom homes in this year and 5 additions and 10 whatever they are, it'll drive a lot of decisions.
I think there's a lot of misconception about industry people like yourself who say, oh, you got to be thinking about your gross margin. But some people hear it as, we'll just throw 32% on everything.
Right.
But that's not really understanding those raw budget, overhead, cost of good numbers and the amount of money you need to bring in on projects to keep you solvent and in business, because a $50,000 bathroom requires much more work proportionally to something like a custom home. So you have to have that extra layer of financial understanding underneath that to make sure that you're pricing the project correctly and getting the right project mix.
Some people will say, like get into a new group and they'll be saying, well, how come you can get 10% on 32% margin and I have to have 42% margin to get that? Well, it's all about what you define as cost of goods, all right? And as long as that's consistent between your estimate and your reporting, your financial reporting, it's up to you and how you want to run your company, but you'll see that I'd like to see as much as possible pushed up above the line into cost of goods versus overhead, because then you're marking it up and you're making money on it and that sort of thing.
Can you talk a little bit about the above the line, below the line cost of goods stuff? I think that to me, in my experience of working for different companies, is a huge factor in what I've perceived to be individual companies' success versus other companies who don't quite have a grasp of whether it's an above the line or below the line expense.
So, this is also always a lively discussion amongst our facilitators as to what should go above and what should go below. But we know there's the basics, right? Materials, subs, in-house labor, and labor burden, which are all the taxes and benefits and things that are paid to the people in the field. Now, typically, the people in the field are keeping time cards so that their time can be appropriately applied to the specific jobs and the phases of those jobs. There's a whole lot of things that are up for debate. I don't feel passionately about many of them, like the production manager, for example. Production manager like yourself, is yours specifically, Ian, above or below the line, your pay?
So I am actually a mix, and that is because I came into this job midway through the budgeted year. So we did some, not a total recasting of where I am in the budget for the second half of the year, but I am a little bit above and a little bit below.
Okay, which also is common. So production managers oftentimes will be below the line because they're dealing with so many projects. It's hard to apply their time to any specific project. And production managers, and oftentimes because they're so busy, don't keep time cards to have it be applied that way. Now, project managers and carpenters and lead carpenters all should be above the line if they're working on specific jobs. But there's time that they have that can't be applied to a job, like when they're in a meeting or things like that. So some of that time has to be reallocated. So it's called an indirect allocation. So you collect a lot of the indirect allocation monies in your overhead and you flip it up into cost of goods in a journal entry that's connected to payroll, right? So some people will put their production manager in through that process, but most not. Because if you're going to be above the line, you're usually keeping a time card or it's indirect allocations pretty much.
Right.
So let's see what salespeople's commissions. That's another one. Some people put it below, some people put it above. I don't care, whatever way you want to do it, So there's a lot of other things that go into indirect allocation, maybe things like small tools. There's a whole list of them.
I think it's easy when you're a smaller contractor and you're thinking like every expense I have is something that's going to a job. But as you get into that growth phase where I believe your threshold is about $1 million and up is what you're looking for for your companies to have for revenue. So I think, yeah. So I think once you get into that, you start to get things like offices and vehicles and some of these other indirect costs that have to go somewhere. And have you found that that's where some of these companies that are in growth mode really need your services to help manage not just what they do with those resources, but how they allocate them within their financials?
Well, that usually is a very early on thing. So, I mean, once you get your basic chart of accounts structured properly, a lot of companies don't move much from that basic structure. Overhead stuff like rent and marketing and office manager pay and utilities and telephone and all that stay where they stay in overhead pretty much always. So it's not so much that gets varied in a growth mode. Where they need help in a growth mode is things like productivity and efficiency and processes and procedures and getting that all nailed down and building the organizational chart, knowing what seats are going to be the most effective. Like you talked about, what seats on this bus are going to make the biggest difference in terms of profitability and productivity. Like a production coordinator, for example, might free you up to do more stuff that's more strategic, bigger picture, things that really make a difference. Now, another thing that's come up right now, especially because it's so crazy trying to find people, right? Good people, is that a lot of our folks are tuning into many of the lean concepts, Six Sigma and some of the lean things to try to drive efficiency so you can do more with fewer people. So that's gotten a big push lately because it's so hard to find people. So the more efficient you can get, and besides, even if you can get all the people you want, the more efficient you are, the less it costs you to do the job. If it costs you less, you can still get your margins and your profits, but your sales price will be lower, and you're doing a really good, fast, effective, great job. So clients will love you, and you get all the business you want, and you're still making all the profits. So it's a win-win.
Right. Efficiency ends up being like the best low-hanging fruit that you can go after, right?
Definitely. Yeah.
So when you're teaching people the financial tools, one of the things that I've noticed working for remodeling companies stems back to my commercial construction days is the work in progress report.
Yes.
And getting the remodeling contractors to understand that level of financial detail. Can you talk a little bit about work in progress reporting and how a savvy owner and production manager manage that report?
So the point of this is percentage of completion accounting, and you use a work in progress spreadsheet. So we provide the spreadsheet to our members if they're not using it already, and it's got just the 4 or 5 columns highlighted that you have to fill in each month or more often for some companies. The basic concept behind it is that you don't recognize revenue or profits until you've produced the work. So some of these remodeling jobs can last 6, 8, 10, 15 months. So you can the goal is to only recognize that revenue that you have earned at any point in time. So it's based on the percentage of the job that's done. And that percentage at its most basic level is determined by the percent of expected costs that have been recognized to date, right? So let's say you got a job that's $100,000 sales price, and it's going to cost you, let's say it's $100. $100, I'm going to make it super simple for myself. Math on the fly is not my thing here, right? So it's $100,000 cost, $200,000 sales price. If you've gotten $50,000 of costs in the door, the work's been done, you've got the purchase orders or the bills from the subs, yada, yada, then you're considered 50% done with the job. Again, at the most basic level, there's some art to it that more sophisticated companies will use. But you'll take that 50% and apply it to the sales price. So $100,000 of the $200,000 would be applied to revenue, $50,000 of the COGS during that period of time. Or it may be 6 months that you've hit that point. So at that point in time, you're 50% complete. Those things hit your profit, hit your profit and loss, and then you're recognizing the revenue at that point, but not until that point. Sometimes people will take these massive deposits and they haven't done any work, and they put it on their P&L like, woohoo! Look,
and then they go buy a boat.
Yeah, exactly. That's our line, right? They go buy a boat, and then they go, oh shoot, I don't have any money to do the dang project. So we want to only recognize it when you've earned it. Otherwise, just remember, it's not your money.
Right. So can you talk a little bit about some of the things that RA does to help owners understand what they should be looking for compensation-wise from their business. It's something that as I've started to write about construction business, that I get a lot of interest in emails from different people about owners' contribution. And it seems like there's either not really a standard in the general zeitgeist of the industry, or maybe it's a high standard that people look at and go, I can't pay myself that amount of money. How do I take that out of the company?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you have to be sure you're making the money, right? And you want to be sure that, you want to make money, and you want to be able to provide a really good workplace for your people, right? You want to have enough benefits that they're going to want to stay with you. You want to be able to do some fun things. You got to build all this stuff into the budget. The old days, and I am not one of these people, but in the old days, it would be 10 and 10, right? The owners take 10 and 10. 10 out of, we should make 10% of the revenue in salary and 10% in net profit. That technically is owner's compensation too, right? So, we still have a stretch goal of trying to make 20% that is available. We call it owner's compensation equivalent. Most owners would not take all that, depending on how big they are, right? They're a $6 million company. They'll leave a whole bunch of that net profit in the business. They'll profit share some of it, but we like them to hit that 20% before they do profit sharing. You got to make the profit before you can share it with that philosophy. So it really varies, like over the years. And a lot of times when people come to us fresh, new, they are not paying themselves anywhere near enough. So the group will tell them, and they're seeing the how everybody else is being compensated in the room. And we do a biannual compensation survey, so we're surveying that. Plus, we do what we call a composite report. So we take all of our membership. Everybody submits data twice a year, in January or in February for the end of the previous year, and in July at the end of June. Right. So every 6 months we collect financial data, a lot of it, like probably 50 different points of data. And then for each round of meetings, we do a composite report that compares, and the big comparison data point is this owner's compensation equivalent. So that's net profit, it's whatever salaries they're taking, and it's whatever draws or dividends they're pulling out of the balance sheet. It's all three of those numbers added together. That percentage, as a percentage of revenue, is how we rank these companies. So each group gets its own report. It compares you to all the other members of your group, and then it also compares you to the average of your group. Then it compares you to the top 25% of all roundtable members. So you can see where you rank in all that comparison. So the way the report is structured is that there's two vertical bars that move, right? One is the average of the group, and one is the top 25%. If you're beating either of those, you're to the left of those bars. So everybody's trying to move to the left, to not be far on the right. The worst person on the far right. So, you got some room for improvement there, dude, that sort of thing. So we give them a lot of tools to see where they are, see how they compare, see how other companies do it. We look at organizational charts. On each organizational chart, the owners give their employees a grade, A, B, C, D. A lot of times people will grade them on a couple of different things like attitude and skill. We'll put in their longevity, how many years they've been with the company, and they'll put in the salary or what they're paying all those different employees. So it really gives these members a fantastic comparison, rural, urban. They can go in and slice and dice some of these reports to get all sorts of data.
So I'm a big proponent of the peer group and roundtable experience. And from my perspective, I would not be at the spot that I am in my career without the peer group that I was in Nessie and the bottom lines groups, and now in the Remodelers Advantage production manager roundtable. Right. Can you talk through how that peer group model works from your perspective as a facilitator, and what that group model has to offer professionals?
Oh, yeah. And before I get into that, I walk the talk too. I belong to a peer group. My peer group is made up of companies who do peer groups. So it's kind of fun. So I meet twice a year with them. We share metrics and all the same bit. But there's no place else that I know of that you can be totally open and transparent with a group of business owners that knows exactly what you're going through. They've been there. They've had their own obstacles to get over. They've had their own challenges, their own successes. They've tried different things than you have, but they're basically doing the same thing. So by sharing your experiences and the good, the bad, and the ugly, you help your peers avoid problems. You help them see different ways they can be more successful. It's just amazing. And it's super, these people are super passionate about what they do. They want to improve. They're psyched. They come in there. They want the advice. They leave with written commitments for actions that they're going to take to improve their business. I just got an email yesterday or the day before that I was so excited about. I sent it off to my staff. One of our members had, at the advice of his peer group, started sales training to become, and he's working through one of our programs. And he was giving them the results of a attempt. He was trying to sell a prospect on a really big job, and he was competing against another good company who was less than he was, and all sorts of things. But he won the job, and he said that the training he's had has been phenomenal, and the only reason he took it was because his group said, you need to commit to sales training. He did it. He took action, and he said it's just mind-boggling the difference it's making for the sales and the revenue he's bringing in. Things like that. There's just no place else where you can have these types of very strategic and intimate conversations about business. Who are you going to talk to? You can't. NARI and the associations are fabulous. We belong to all of them. They're great. But you can't talk about this stuff. You can't talk about, that you're having problems with your business partner, or that you got embezzled by an office manager, or, it's just like every pro sports person, every pro athlete has a coach, right? People to advise. This is your board of advisors. It's just, and then you have the facilitators, and you have our whole staff. There's 10 of us dedicated to helping our members be more successful with every resource we can dig up. And, and the other cool thing about this is I had a large company from the Cleveland area. The owner wrote to me and said, I'm really looking for other companies that do X. Do you know any? And I'm like, yes, because one of our superpowers is our network of people. So I'm like, yes, I know those people. I introduced them. They were beginning to visit. It just opened up a whole new world for him. So it's a whole community. It's awesome. I love it, as you can tell.
One of the things that always strikes me about my production manager group is, like, no matter where you are on your experience level, you do have something to offer somebody else. And you might be seeing something that's in someone's blind spot. So I had a really great experience this last time when we were in DC, and one of my members, who's the highest performing, highest revenue member of our group, he had a total blind spot that he wasn't using his marketing department to advertise for people to come work for him. And his marketing department was producing all this great social media work and other just really great marketing product all toward the clients. And I said to him, well, you clearly are paying somebody for marketing, so just have them throw some pictures in there with carpenters in them or with your staff doing the work, and make it less about your great finished product and more about the people that are doing it. And
exactly.
You have a ready-made Indeed ad, or you can reboot your social media to be toward carpenters as opposed to toward clients. So just seems like there's always stuff like that going on in groups, or people who have already done the safety manual and maybe you're not really happy with yours, and you can bring those things back to the rest of your company. There's
so many things that are, right now we've got a new award we're giving out. It's called the Heart of RA, which is recognizing companies that are doing philanthropic work in their communities. That's a really cool thing that would appeal to a lot of potential employees for those companies too. So we're giving them a reason to promote that out there in the community. But there's so many great ideas. Business owners are a creative bunch. So it's not like it's, the the groups just share so much. We used to call it R&D, rip off and duplication. And that's what we're encouraging. It's not like, that's what we're all about. Let's share. Let's figure out what works. Let's share it. What's that saying about the tide rises all boats or something like that?
Yep.
That one. Yeah.
What do you see as Remodelers Advantage's biggest contribution to the industry, and what are your goals and hopes for the group going forward?
Well, I think that through the years, we have helped people understand that this is an industry in which you can have a fantastic life. I think that we've helped them understand that their business is simply a tool to help them get that life. And by focusing some of their efforts on fine-tuning, honing that tool, you change the life for yourself, your family, and everybody that you come in contact with, right? It just is a fantastic industry that changes so many lives. So I'm really proud to have been a part of this industry for so many years. One of the things that we're doing now to help we call it the power of we, right? It's not the power of I, it's the power of we in this community. We're trying to bring that power to more staff members. So we've got the 88, 90 production managers in those groups. We also just started a CFO group. So we've got CFOs from some of the largest companies getting together and talk about some of their issues. And we're exploring doing this for more positions within the organization to try to get everybody thinking about the results of the company, think like owners, understand how to get the results they want, through people and through their organizations. So,
yeah, it's been a really great experience for me, moving up through my career, thinking that maybe I would top out as a project manager or something like that, something much more in the field orientated. But I'm really very happy to be in the position that I'm in here at TDS and have the group as a whole. I have a lot of thanks to give that group for helping me get here and starting to be successful in it.
That's great. Now, you've had a variety. How many roundtable meetings have you been to of ours?
I've been to 2 now.
Okay,
so April will be my 3rd.
Okay, great. So again, we've got some great facilitators for the production manager groups too. And most of them are owners of companies or were owners of companies. So they bring a perspective to the production managers as well as vice versa.
Right.
Which is wonderful.
So it's been great having you on. Is there anything else that you want to throw at the audience from your perspective at RA?
I think that just want to let them know that we would love to welcome them into this very special community of very generous and wonderful people that I'm very proud to hang with and get. Even, I've been doing this now for 32 years, and I go to these roundtable meetings, the remodeling company owners roundtable meetings. I leave there with 10 pages of notes for myself and feeling so jazzed. It's not even my industry. So that's the feeling I want everybody here to get to experience by being part of this organization. So I'd love to have them. And thank you, Ian, for being part of our organization too.
Well, thanks, Victoria. It's been great having you here talking with us today. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have. Thanks for joining us, and thanks to all of you for listening. Please remember to send us your comments, questions, and suggestions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. And please like, comment, or review us wherever you're listening. It helps other people find our podcast. Stay safe, everybody. Thanks again for listening.
Thank you.